Hi everyone, in this article we're going to describe air conditioner setup. Now for people installing ECUs on street cars where this is legal to do so, often people will leave the air conditioner installed in the car because it's comfortable and all that sort of thing. The biggest advantage that you gain is being able to do idle control. So for a start, the ECU can actually increase the idle effort to compensate for the extra mechanical load placed on the engine by the air conditioning compressor. Secondly, the ECU can disable the compressor if it thinks that the engine's about to stall. For example, if the RPM drops below a certain threshold. And lastly, the ECU can disable the compressor when the driver's at wide open throttle. Let's first discuss how the air conditioner has to be wired into the ECU. So you need an input and an output. The input usually gets pulled to ground when the air conditioner request from the user is active. So this is normally a button on the instrument cluster or something like that. Normally this will be connected in series with a pressure switch, so that if the refrigerant pressure is too low or too high, then that disables the pressure request from the ECU. So this needs to be connected to a spare digital input pin on the ECU, and the input pin needs to be configured as being an air conditioning request input. Now normally, as I said, they pull to low when the air conditioner is supposed to be on. In that case, you just leave it as active low. If however it gets pulled to 12 volts when the air conditioner request is on, then you'll need to select that as being active high. And just like the other digital inputs, you can look and see whether that input is being activated at the moment or not. The second thing you'll need is an output. This output controls a relay which applies power to the magnetic clutch on the front of the compressor. So when the output is off, the compressor is not activated, and when it's on, it activates the compressor and makes the air conditioning work. On almost every car, the coil for the relay for this compressor, its positive is connected to 12 volts and the negative goes to the ECU. So the ECU needs to pull that output low to enable the air conditioner. So if this is the case, then you can use any unused injector, ignition or auxiliary output pin to control this. So then you just need to configure that output in the output section in the software to be air conditioner. Now let's discuss the settings that need to be set for the air conditioner to work correctly. There are a few to set up, but once they are set up, it works really nicely. The first one is the new idle speed when the air conditioner is switched on. Now what the ECU does is it takes the greater of either the aircon idle speed or the basic idle speed against coolant temperature and uses that as the new target idle speed. On the select ECUs we used to have an additional RPM which gets added onto the target when the air conditioner is active, but we found that when the engine was cold, this often ended up with a target idle speed that was higher than we wanted. So where you want to set this is up to you, but in most cases that would be set about 1000 or 1100 RPM, when the engine's normal idling speed would be, say, 750 or 800 RPM. So what it means is that the compressor has slightly higher speed, so the air conditioning is actually more effective, and also it means that there's a little bit more RPM margin to protect against the stall condition. The next setting which needs to be set is the additional idle effort when the air conditioner is enabled. Now this gets added to the base idle duty cycle against coolant temperature, and the actual idle effort is based on this with any closed loop corrections. Remember that normally you'll have thermofans turn on at the same time as the air conditioning, so the extra idle effort for the thermofans already has to be set correctly before the air conditioning one can be set. The easiest way to set this, if you have the closed loop idle already working, is to watch the idle effort when the air conditioner is off, and then turn the air conditioner on, wait for the RPM to stabilise to the new target, and then the difference between that and the duty cycle before the air conditioner was turned on is the extra idle effort that's required for when the air conditioner is on. Now, as I said before, that'll also enable the thermofans, so you need to just subtract off any difference because of the thermofans from that number. The next setting that you need to worry about is the delay. So the ECU actually applies the additional idle effort before it turns on the compressor. So this gives the engine some time to adjust to the new load and new RPM before the compressor is actually turned on. If you don't do this, then what can happen is you get a dip in the RPM before the compressor is turned on, and it's not very nice if you're trying to drive it like that. OEMs don't do that, so we don't like to do it either. So the way you set this is by adjusting it back and forward. So if you get a dip straight after you switch on the air conditioning, then that probably means that the delay is not long enough. On the other hand, if the delay is too long, the ECU can actually start to do a closed loop correction on the new idle value before the compressor's engaged, which means that it'll correct to the wrong condition. So a typical value would be about 0.5 of a second. And when it's right and you log the RPM against time with the air conditioning turning on and off, it actually looks very clean like this. This is taken on a pretty much standard R33 GTR. Now the next setting is the minimum RPM. So you'd normally need to set this below where the engine will idle, for example, say 600 RPM or something like that. Below this RPM, the ECU will disable the air conditioning compressor completely. So this is basically to prevent a stall induced by the air conditioning compressor. It has the secondary benefit of disabling the air conditioner while you're trying to start the engine, so you don't have the starter motor trying to drive the air conditioning compressor. And the last function I want to mention is that the ECU will always disable the air conditioning compressor when you're at wide open throttle. So there you go, stay cool.